Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and here on my channel I make crystal videos, small business videos, geology videos, stuff like that. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to subscribe because I put out new videos every week or so. Today's video is the start of a new series called Crystals in Your State, where we go through each state or region and talk about the minerals that are mined here and the geologic history of the area. I was inspired to start this series because when I was making my last video, which was all about kyanite, I read that a lot of kyanite is actually mined in Virginia, and I just moved to Virginia. So I thought it would be interesting to look into what else is mined in this state and then go through each other state and see what other cool things are going on in there. So even though I just moved here, I kind of already knew a lot about the geology of Virginia specifically because when I was in school, we actually went from Ohio to Virginia on a field trip for my volcanology class. So we went to Shenandoah National Park and we kind of learned about all the geologic history of this area. I actually found some of my old notes and papers from when I was in school about the history of Virginia specifically. So this is definitely going to be more of a geology heavy video. I mean, it's literally all just geology. And even though I mostly talk about crystals, this is like one of my favorite topics to dive into, which is like the history of why regions look the way they do, the geologic history, how the plates moved, how mountains formed. That's my favorite thing to look into, so I had a lot of fun making this and looking into it. So if you want to hear more about that, or you want to hear me talk about your state next, then definitely comment down below. Virginia specifically has a really complex and rich geologic history with many different minerals and interesting structures. And while I feel like the geology of the area is really important in understanding the types of minerals, rocks, and fossils that are here, I'm going to start with the list of minerals you can find in the state as opposed to the geologic history, since that's probably what most of you are here for. Just because the history is so long and geology dense, I try to explain it as briefly and simply as I can, but if you just want to know the minerals, we'll get right to that. And if you'd like to stick around and hear about the geology and how everything formed, then that will be next. Before we get into the more unique minerals that are mined in Virginia, I want to talk about some of the most common minerals on Earth's crust that can be found just about anywhere. So these are some things you might find if you go out looking for rocks in Virginia or any area really. The most common minerals on Earth's crust are feldspars, quartz, pyroxene, amphibole, mica, and olivine. And although it doesn't make the list of top minerals on the crust, calcite is also very abundant and can probably be found just about anywhere. So here are some of the most interesting rocks, minerals, and resources that you can find in the state of Virginia. Also, all the photos that I'm including are pictures of pieces mined specifically from Virginia, not just general photos. So it's really cool to see what kind of really unique, beautiful specimens are mined in this state. And most of these photos were found on Mindat, so credits to whoever took them. Virginia's state rock is nelsonite, which is a type of igneous rock composed of the minerals ilmenite and apatite. It was first discovered in Nelson County, Virginia, and it's significant because it was mined for its titanium dioxide. However, in my research, both amazonite and unakite were listed as unofficial state rocks or minerals. Amethyst is one mineral that can be found in Virginia. Quality amethyst specimens in Virginia are older. They're not really being discovered as frequently. They're more rare, but they're really beautiful, and there's some beautiful clusters that came out of the state. Unfortunately, many of the locations or mines that once mined amethyst are now closed. Amazonite is a big mineral that can be found in Virginia. High quality amazonite specimens have been found and mined in Amelia County. Amazonite is very abundant in the state and it has really beautiful high quality pieces. There were even some mines where you could go and mine your own, but unfortunately those are also now closed. Gold was originally mined in Virginia in the early 1800s before it was found in California, and the discovery of gold in California decreased mining in Virginia because it was just in much higher quantities there that it wasn't worth it to mine it in Virginia anymore. Gold production was last recorded in 1947 in Virginia, and it was mined in an area called the Gold Pyrite Belt. Gold can still be found in Virginia in small amounts, but it isn't concentrated enough to justify the mining of it. And as you could probably tell from the name, pyrite can also be found in Virginia in the Gold Pyrite Belt. Silver can also be found in Virginia and has been mined primarily as a byproduct of lead, zinc, copper, and gold mining. Garnet is a mineral formed in metamorphic rocks and can be found in the Piedmont and Blue Ridge provinces in the state. Multiple types of garnets can be found here, including almandine and spessartine garnets. Unakite is a metamorphic rock composed of pink feldspar and green epidote that can be found in the Blue Ridge province, specifically in Shenandoah National Park. Kyanite is one of the most commonly mined minerals in Virginia, and as we talked about in my last video, kyanite is used for industrial purposes because it has a heat-resistant property, so that is what most of the kyanite in the state is used for. However, you do still find some unique specimens that are used for display and enjoyment purposes that come out of these mines. Much of the kyanite here is from Willis Mountain Kyanite Mine, but it can be found in other places across the state. And kyanite is another mineral that forms through metamorphism, so once we talk about the geologic history of Virginia, it'll make sense why there's all sorts of cool metamorphic rocks and minerals here. Hematite is another mineral that is mined in the Valley and Ridge province, and smoky quartz can be found in the state. There's some beautiful clusters that have been found, and also pieces mixed with amazonite. Fluorite can also be found in Virginia, not in huge quantities, but there's some beautiful purple fluorite that comes out of the state. Celestite can be found in Wise County, Virginia. Prehnite can be found in Virginia, and there are some really beautiful botryoidal pieces. Topaz is another mineral that can be found in Amelia County. Vivianite has been found near Richmond, Virginia, but these specimens seem to have been found decades ago, like they're older, and it doesn't seem like they were found in large quantities. Historically, copper has been mined in Virginia, which means copper minerals such as malachite and azurite can be found. These two can be found in multiple places across the state, although it's not in large mineable quantities. Diamonds can be found in Virginia, but only 5 diamonds have ever been recorded to be found in the state. The second largest diamond ever found in the US, known as the Punch Jones diamond, it was 34.48 carats, and it was found in West Virginia, although for some reason they just consider it to be a Virginia diamond. There are other areas that may have diamonds in them, but only a couple have been found. Uranium can be found in the bedrock of Virginia, and it has been explored in multiple locations. Mining of uranium in the state is currently prohibited, but it's being explored for research purposes, obviously because uranium is pretty dangerous. People don't really want it mined and brought out of the state, but it's still being researched, I guess, just not unearthed. Other minerals that can be found in the state include talc, apatite, micas, starlite, calcite, barite, black tourmaline, sphalerite, rutilated quartz, aquamarine, and sapphire. There are many, many more rocks and minerals found in Virginia other than what I've just listed, but not all of them are in large amounts or they're not really sought after. I'll have all my sources linked down below in the description, as well as a link to a page on MinDat where you can see the full list of all the minerals that have been reported to be in Virginia. Also, I mostly listed just minerals here, but if we were to get into rocks, then we would be here all day talking, because there are all sorts of cool metamorphic rocks in Virginia. Now let's briefly mention fossils. Virginia's state fossil is a scallop with this name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I tried and I failed. But it was found in the lower Yorktown Formation that existed between 8 to 3 million years ago. The oldest fossils found in Virginia are trace fossils, which means they are not actual remains of something that was alive, but they are remnants or traces of a living thing that once existed. So the trace fossils that can be found here are little tubes that formed from worms in the Cambrian period, which was about 500 million years ago. Virginia spent a lot of time underwater and covered by seas in its ancient past, so you can find lots of marine fossils like brachiopods, crinoids, gastropods, coral, trilobites, nautiloids, rhizoans, echinoderms, and more. The Solite Quarry in Virginia ranks as one of the most important sites for Triassic fossils in the entire world. And the Triassic period was 250 to 200 million years ago. There's a wide variety of fossils here, including fish and reptiles, but it is most well known for its insect fossils. Dinosaur footprints can also be found from the Triassic period in a nearby quarry called the Culpeper Stone Quarry. This is interesting because no actual dinosaur bones have been found in the state of Virginia, but there are plenty of footprints. Closer to the shore on the coastal plain, there are many locations where you can find fossils such as shark's teeth and other marine fossils. Next, I just wanted to point out a couple of geologically interesting locations in the state of Virginia that you can visit if you're looking to search for rocks, minerals, or just check out some cool geology. There's tons of cool places across the state for collecting rocks, but make sure you are only collecting rocks in places where it's allowed. It's always illegal to collect or remove anything from national parks, especially rocks. You want to leave things exactly as you found them. As tempting as it is to take a cool rock, make sure you can only take them where it's allowed. Make sure you have any permission or permits required to collect any rocks, minerals, or fossils that you find. The first place I found that was really cool is called Fairy Stone State Park. This place is known for its fairy stones, which are actually starlight crystals. These crystals form little bricks that twist under pressure into 60 or 90 degree angles, and they form little crosses. These crystals were formed miles and miles under the surface, but as mountains began to form in the area, they were pushed up to the surface. They were covered in another rock called schist, but once they were on the surface, erosion wore away this other rock and left behind these cute little crystals that you can find and collect in this park. Shenandoah National Park is Virginia's only national park. It's beautiful. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We'll talk about the cool things you can find here a little bit more once we're going through the geology and geologic provinces in the state. Westmoreland State Park is a park that is more along the coast, not in the mountains, and this is a great place for finding those shark tooth fossils. And last, we have Natural Chimney State Park. While this park isn't known for its minerals specifically, it does have interesting rock formations that are hundreds of millions of years old. These rocks are really cool and document the area's geologic history. There are other state parks, beaches, all sorts of beautiful places to visit in Virginia, but those were just a couple that stood out to me as geologically interesting. And aside from parks, there are many abandoned old mines in the state where you can still find cool rocks and minerals. There's too many locations to even list, but no matter where you are in the state, you can probably find a really cool place nearby to go out and collect rocks. There seem to be a lot of mine your own crystal locations in Virginia that I saw when I was looking into it, but just about every single one I looked up has been permanently or temporarily closed. So if you do look into one of these places, make sure it still exists before you go. But you don't always need a specific mine or a specific park to find cool things. You might be able to find cool rocks just in your own backyard. Now let's get into the geologic history of Virginia and the processes that formed the beautiful mountains and wide variety of minerals in the state. Virginia has a lot of interesting geology that was created by multiple mountain building events. Because of these multiple events, Virginia now has multiple provinces that are defined by their unique topography and the distribution of rocks and minerals that can be found there. These regions are the Appalachian Plateau, Valley and Ridge Province, Blue Ridge Province, Piedmont, and the Coastal Plain. The first mountain building event that shaped Virginia was called the Grenville Orogeny, and orogeny just means a mountain building event. This was about 1 billion years ago in the Precambrian period. And of course, the Earth looks really different 1 billion years ago. On this map, Laurentia is what we know as modern-day North America. You can see it kind of looks turned on its side, and it's sitting on the equator. Laurentia was part of a supercontinent called Rodinia, where most of the land on Earth shared a continental plate. Rocks from the Grenville Orogeny are the oldest rocks on the East Coast. These old rocks are mostly gneiss, which is a type of metamorphic rock that was formed from the high pressures and temperatures during this time. The Grenville Orogeny consisted of multiple collisions into the continent, which created mountains. In current-day Virginia, there are no Grenville rocks that are visible at the surface. They are all now basement rocks, which have been buried by younger rocks. However, some of these rocks are visible in other places on the East Coast. After this mountain building event, rifting began about 565 million years ago. Laurentia, which is modern-day North America, began to break away from the rest of the supercontinent due to tension beneath the continental crust. A series of rifts began forming across the continent. Rifts are cracks caused by plates moving away from each other. Some of these rifts broke completely, causing parts of the continent to move far away from each other. However, sometimes rifts can fail, which creates elongated basins which can be filled with water or sediments. Because the crust is also getting stretched out and ripped, it's a lot thinner, which allows for lava to come up and it can fill up these basins. While the continents were splitting apart, a new ocean was forming called the Iapetus Ocean. I think that's how you say it. When I was typing it out, I kept thinking the capital I was a lowercase l. They should make those look a lot more different. The sediments that filled this ocean created a sandstone, which is still visible in some places today. If you've never seen one of those videos of how the plates move around on the Earth, I would definitely recommend watching them because it will help it make a lot more sense to you to visualize how exactly these plates are moving around and ripping apart from each other, colliding, because it's kind of confusing to describe it if you haven't seen it. So I'll have one linked down below. Around 500 million years ago, this new ocean stopped widening and the continents actually started moving back towards each other again. As the continents started approaching each other, the oceanic crust in the middle forced under one of the continental plates, creating a subduction zone, which is where one plate goes underneath another. The friction and melting of the crust from the intense pressure of colliding plates created a volcanic island arc called the Tectonic Islands. These islands eventually collided into North America in an event called the Tectonic Orogeny. The subduction of the oceanic plate going underneath the North American plate is recorded by a series of rocks called ophiolites that are rocks from the oceanic crust that gets pushed onto the continental crust up to the surface. These rocks include deep sea sediments, the oceanic crust itself, and rocks from the upper mantle. These were all scraped off of the descending plate and added to the continental crust. For millions of years after this tectonic orogeny, the Northeast US experienced a lot lot calmer geology. There were no more mountain building events. It was pretty much just erosion and deposition of sediments. Then came another mountain building event called the Akkadian orogeny from 430 million years ago to about 345 million years ago. It began in the north as another continent collided with North America and collided from north to south, closing the gap like a zipper. During the time of this mountain building event, sea levels began to fluctuate and lower. Swamps began to form on coasts of the retreating seas, and when the vegetation in these swamps died, it fell into stagnant, low oxygen water, which slowed the decomposition, forming huge deposits of peat. When sediment covered these deposits, it turned into some of the largest coal beds in the world, some of which are found in the state of Virginia. About 300 to 250 million years ago, there was a final mountain building event called the Alleghanian orogeny, which was when a continent called Gondwana collided with North America to form the supercontinent that we know, Pangaea. This created the Central and Southern Appalachian Mountains. At their peak, the Appalachians could have been as high as the Himalayan mountains today, up to the size of Mount Everest, which is about 29,000 feet. For comparison, the tallest mountain in the Appalachian Mountains today is in North Carolina, and it reaches only 6,600 feet. Mountain ranges are much, much taller when they are first formed, and over hundreds of millions of years, they erode into much smaller mountains. That is why the Appalachian Mountains are a little underwhelming today compared to other mountain ranges in the world because they're so old. This was the final mountain building event for the Appalachian Mountains, but the tectonic activity did not stop there. Pangaea lasted for about 100 million years before the continents started to drift apart again, creating more rift basins. Around 200 million years ago, during the Jurassic period, is when Pangaea finally broke apart into the current day continents and started to move into the position that we see them in today. This is also around the time where the Atlantic Ocean began forming due to rifting and new ocean crust being formed at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is a plate boundary at the seafloor that still exists today and is still pushing continents apart by creating new ocean crust. Even though there wasn't dramatic tectonic activity on the East Coast in the past 140 million years, the topography has changed significantly due to erosion, deposition, sea level fluctuations, and the Ice Age, which created the coastal plain of the East Coast that we see today. Today, Virginia is near a passive plate margin, which means two plates are just sliding past each other. This means there's very mild tectonic activity, if any at all. Volcanic activity is not associated with these types of plate boundaries, and while there still can be earthquakes in Virginia, quite a few actually, they're not usually strong enough to be felt for many different reasons, mostly because they're much deeper down. They're just not going to be as severe as the earthquakes in, say, California along a much more active plate boundary. There are a lot of igneous rocks in Virginia due to the rifting that spread the crust apart and allowed lava to flow. But this was hundreds of millions of years ago. There was actually a lot more recent volcanic activity. Mole Hill is in Virginia and is the youngest volcanic feature on the eastern US. This volcano was active only 47 million years ago, which is of course a long time ago, but geologically that's a lot more recent than hundreds of millions of years ago. It doesn't look like anything more than a hill today, but it was once an active cinder cone volcano spilling basalt onto an otherwise sedimentary landscape. Trimble Knob is another young volcano in the area, and while these are geologically recent, these are still extinct volcanoes with little to no threat of erupting today. There are at least 100 other extinct ancient volcanoes in Virginia, but these are the two tallest and youngest. It is actually still unknown why these volcanoes erupted so recently in geologic time, because Virginia was not on an active plate boundary at the time that they were believed to have erupted. So as you can see, Virginia's geologic history is very complex and not everything is fully figured out yet. So those are the main events that shaped Virginia's geology. So let's revisit the provinces I mentioned now that we know a little bit more about the history. So the first province is the Appalachian Plateau. This is in the far east of the state and it is the smallest province in the state. The Appalachian Plateau, of course, is a lot bigger and stretches across many states, but only a little bit of that is touching Virginia. This region has many rivers and streams, flat-lying sedimentary rocks. It is abundant in coal and natural gas. Next, we have the Valley and Ridge province, and in the Valley and Ridge, rocks go from flat-lying to folded and faulted from the dramatic plate movement in the state's history. A lot of marine fossils can be found here from when the state was covered by seas. Next, we have the Blue Ridge province, which of course includes the Blue Ridge Mountains and contains the highest peak in the state, which is Mount Rogers at about 4,000 feet above sea level. This area contains mostly igneous and metamorphic rocks and contains the oldest rocks in the state. Within the Blue Ridge Mountains is Shenandoah National Park. I've been to Shenandoah quite a few times, one of which, like I mentioned, was my volcanology field trip. And at first it seemed kind of weird to visit Virginia of all places to learn about volcanoes, but once you learn more about its history, it makes a lot more sense, and Virginia has actually a lot of volcanic features. There are some cool volcanic features in the park, such as columnar jointing, igneous dikes, and pillow basalts. About 570 million years ago, when there was extensive lava flows due to rifting, these lava flows covered over 4,000 square miles. The thickness of these lava flows ranged from 46 to 82 meters thick. The heat from the lava flows caused the rock below it to be metamorphosed and transformed from granites and gneisses into a rock called unakite. Unakite has a unique pink and green color combination due to its potassium feldspar and green epidote. Other interesting features that can be seen in the park are faults, folds, fractures, waterfalls, streams, and of course, all sorts of cool metamorphic rocks. In the park and nearby area, there are over 40 abandoned mines. The next province is Piedmont. Piedmont is the largest province and has igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks, and the geology here gets a lot more complicated. There are many valuable resources found in this province, such as coal, slate, kyanite, and uranium. Lastly, we have the coastal plain, which is obviously on the coast. This is the youngest landscape, and it contains rivers and tributaries, sand, silt, clay, and marine fossils. This landscape was shaped by erosion and changing sea levels over time. The Chesapeake Bay is here on the coast, and this was actually shaped by a meteor impact 35 million years ago. So as you can see, Virginia has a very interesting and active geologic past. It's no wonder that the state has so many interesting gems, rocks, and natural resources. So that's everything I have for you today about the geology and minerals of Virginia. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is really one of my favorite topics to dive into, and one of the biggest reasons why I study geology is because I love large geology, geologic history, things like that. So it was really fun to combine minerals with that. I would love to make this a series and continue making videos about other states and regions. So let me know which state you would like me to cover next. Also, let me know if you want me to get more geologically in depth or if that was too confusing. Not to undermine your intelligence, but I don't want it to be too scientifically heavy and confusing. So let me know how that was. If it was easy to understand, if you have more questions, let me know what other things you'd like answered about your state in upcoming videos. Please like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to see more crystal and geology content. As always, my crystal shop, cosmicgeology.com, will be linked down below, as well as all my other links. I also have my aunt's Etsy shop. She makes really high quality bath and body products that I use every single day. They're so nice. So if you would like to support a local Virginia small business, I always have that linked down below in my description. It's called Williamsburg Body and Bath. They're on Etsy, so definitely check them out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.